Hi, I'm Berend Hierik, and in this video we will look in some more detail at the development of the embryo during the 4th week of human development. Did you ever ask yourself how the gut tubes become situated inside your body? And why the organization of your abdominal organs is so universal among people? Well, in this module we will cover some of these aspects. Starting in the 4th week of human development, the embryo will fold and transform from a more or less flat plate into a three-dimensional structure, with the skin on the outside and the gut on the inside. Here you see a museum model of a human embryo in wax. You will use this and other models later yourself. It shows great detail, but it's less suitable to help you to understand the folding process itself. For that we will use some schematic drawings. Let's break down some of it. Here you see a drawing of a longitudinal section through the embryo, so from head to tail. We will talk about the cranial side for the side of the head and about the caudal side for the tail side. At the start of the 4th week, the embryo is sandwiched between two cavities, the amniotic cavity and the yolk sac cavity. In the transverse section, it looks like this. The embryo now consists of an ectoderm layer, which is continuous with the inner layer of the amniotic membrane, and an endoderm layer, which is continuous with the inner layer of the yolk sac membrane. In between there is a layer of mesoderm in which you can recognize the axial, paraxial, intermediate and lateral plate compartments. Cells from these mesodermal compartments contribute to distinct structures or organs. For the development of the abdomen, the lateral plate mesoderm is of special interest. This mesoderm splits into a layer of somatic mesoderm and a layer of splanchnic mesoderm. The consequence of that is that a new cavity forms in between these two layers, as I show here in the picture, which is called the intraembryonic coelomic cavity, or the intraembryonic coelom for short. Now the embryo will fold and starts looking like a real embryo. The folding process is complex, so let's break it down in two parts, which actually take place simultaneously: cranial-caudal folding and lateral folding. Let's start with the first one and look at this picture again. Remember that the cranial side is on the left and the caudal side is on the right. The ectoderm is on the top side, or dorsal side, and the endoderm is on the bottom side, or ventral side. Try and imagine that we fix the embryo at the location of the oropharyngeal membrane, which represents the future front end of the gut tube. Let's use this pool noodle as a model for the embryo at this stage. This is the oropharyngeal membrane. This is the dorsal and the ventral side. The future brain rapidly grows into a cranial direction, and while fixing the position of the oropharyngeal membrane, that results in a rolling movement. Note that the endoderm, which was previously on the ventral side of the embryo, now gets incorporated into the embryo. The caudal side rolls over similarly. In a drawing, it looks like this. At the cranial side, the endoderm folds in to form the foregut. And at the caudal side, the hindgut develops similarly. The part of the future gut tube in between is called the midgut. Identifying these parts of the gut tube is important to understand the adult anatomy. For example, in both the embryo and in the adult, each gut part receives blood from its own specific branch of the aorta. Now let's focus on the lateral folding. We start from the same initial view. The left and right sides of the embryo, in fact the distal parts of the lateral plate mesoderm, move downward in a ventral direction. This ventral movement is followed by a medial movement, bringing the distal parts of the lateral plate in proximity to each other. Note that part of the midgut and the yolk sac cavity are still connected with what is called the vitelline duct. This will become part of the future umbilical cord. Eventually, the distal parts of the lateral plate meet each other in the midline of the embryo, ventral from the gut tube. Note that the somatic mesoderm now forms part of the body wall, whereas the splanchnic mesoderm covers the gut tube. The intraembryonic coelom now forms a cavity surrounding the gut tube. Combining cranial caudal and lateral folding have now resulted in an embryo which is almost entirely enclosed by amniotic cavity, which will be filled with amniotic fluid. The somatic lateral plates all converge into a central point, the future umbilicus. Connections to the yolk sac cavity and to the placenta will join there into the umbilical cord, which will form the only physical but vital connection of the embryo to the mother. In addition, the folding processes have now resulted in the formation of a foregut, a midgut, and a hindgut, which will make up the entire gut tube and its derivatives. This aspect of development will be covered in another video.